Cassidy, before he left, had a question that he was hoping to ask you, Governor Rosselló, on as you modernize and rebuild and move towards a more resilient Puerto Rico. One of the objectives for transforming the energy system there is to modernize the generation fleet and increase the development of renewable energy and natural gas fire facilities, including increased use of LNG. You indicated that your goal is to be 100% renewable by 2050. What steps are you taking to help facilitate the conversion to greater use of LNG?
Right. So we've already started with several projects on the pipeline. So we see this in several work streams. Number one, we have the IRP work stream so that we could put the resources that we need long term. But number two, we also have the transmission and distribution work stream. Our commitment is that by the end of December 2019, we will have a concession in place in Puerto Rico. And through that tract, there are several projects. I want to showcase one of them that's very particular. We have an RFP that we're almost ready to move forward on for the conversion of San Juan 6 and 7 power plants into LNG from expensive fossil fuels. So our expectation is by summertime, we will have that conversion. That will save anywhere from 0.8 to 0.9 cents a kilowatt hour to the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico. It'll make it cleaner and it'll make it more sustainable. We're also seeing with the IRP now different areas where we can make other conversions, such as in the Palo Seco plant, in Mayagüez, and down southeast, which was severely affected, establishing a new plant that can give that energy LNG conversion. So those projects are underway, and in parallel to that, we have a RFP out for a peaker unit substitution. This one would be renewables. This one would be solar and battery component for peaker unit substitution, as well as the renegotiation of outstanding PPOAs that amount to about 330 megawatts a kilowatt hour. So all of these projects that we're talking about, we aim to have them either finished or significantly started before the end of the year. That means that we're already pushing forward that agenda, and within the scope, there are 25 other projects. I would love to discuss them with your staff as well, that we have in the pipeline, whether it be conversion to gas or renewable projects, such as a virtual power plant. This is one of the projects that I'm mostly excited about, using public housing, for example, to use the rooftops and then redirecting energy where it's needed. Puerto Rico could be a model showcase to do that. And lastly, I would add, Madam Chairwoman, our commitment to incorporate nanogrids and microgrids that will be grid independent, and that would be probably run on natural gas or CHP, at least the commitments that we have seen, so that the consumer has choice. So projects are already moving forward. What we need to have is clarity as to where the resources for the rebuild, when are they coming, and what the amount will be, because that really will depend on what we have. We have a plan. We have a strategy. We're moving forward on many of these projects, but we don't want, as the construction is moving forward, it would be a shame to have delays on federal resources and allocation be the bottleneck towards this transformation.
Let me ask just a little on that, because you had mentioned in response to, I guess it was Senator Manchin earlier, in discussing FEMA and probably other federal agencies as well. But what are you doing to align PREPA's needs and asks with the requirements and the funding process of the federal agencies, specifically changing the relationship that PREPA has with FEMA in order to access more of these FEMA dollars?
Right. So we recognize that there's always been, when you look at PREPA, the memories that are evoked are the memories of the past. We've put leadership in there in order to make those changes. One of the changes was to establish a precise office with FEMA so that everything would run through, would have visibility, and we could...
That's been established?
That's been established. What we're expecting now is, since we've are committed to working under the 428 section, where we can get the damage estimations for the sector. What we want to do is see how we can move that forward quicker, because many of these projects, which is the game changer with that 428 section, instead of having just to put the old poles back up, we can reinvest in the sector. And we already have a damage assessment. We already know what we would need in order to create this new energy grid of the future. I can give you some of the estimates that we have. It's at about $17.5 billion for the transmission and distribution, complete a process that we're seeing, and it's about $6 billion for the generation part. Now, we need to see which one of those projects are eligible for FEMA, which ones would be eligible for CDBG funding, and which ones would be private sector and local government enacted. But that conversation needs to be had, because at the current state, we're only talking about putting up the old grid, which is unsustainable. We really need to be pushing harder and into the new grid and to the new model.
Well, and this is so much of that conversation that we had in this committee shortly after Puerto Rico and USVI had been hit by both of these devastating hurricanes, was how do we make sure that we don't spend the money multiple times?
Right.
That the goal here is to do it right the first time, and use those dollars wisely. My last question to you, and this again is directed to you, Governor Rosselló, this is in reference to the First Circuit Court panel's ruling that I mentioned in my opening. In your view, what is the immediate impact of that ruling, in that the members of the Oversight Board were appointed, that is unconstitutional? Does this have any impact on the day-to-day interaction with the Oversight Board? What does it do to you on the ground right now, if anything?
Well, there's certainly some uncertainty that has been established, and I would propose that we use this moment and this juncture to address some of our concerns with the oversight structure that we have in Puerto Rico. There are many things that we can talk about, but I would like to focus mainly on one, and it is the notion that an oversight board oversteps its boundaries and starts trying to work on the policy-making decisions of the government of Puerto Rico, and furthermore, intruding into the day-to-day aspects of operations in government. This has been an unfortunate outcome of the PROMESA bill, and what we're looking for is clarity within this. We recognize that there was a spirit of the law created with PROMESA, that we can attend to the debt crisis, that we could push forward and have open, vibrant economy moving forward. But the spirit of the law was not to control the policy of Puerto Rico, and was not to get involved into the day-to-day workings of government. So, our legal team is assessing what just happened, and we'll take steps moving forward into the future. But having this conversation now, it is important that we realize, if we want some sort of experiment to work, it cannot be an undemocratic type of system that every day oversteps its boundaries and limits what the policy and decision-making prowess of the elected government of Puerto Rico is in charge for. I would like to reiterate, this only happens in Puerto Rico and potentially in the territories because we are not a state. This structure cannot happen in a state. It is inherently unequal. It is inherently undemocratic. I have opposed it from the get-go, but there are challenges, and I'm willing to work, and we've had results on that path forward. But in order to have results, we can't be overstepping the boundaries of the elected government of Puerto Rico. We need to work towards a solution, and we have a clear path forward on what we want to do. We just need all of the stakeholders to be aligned, and if we do so, I think the future of Puerto Rico's and of the territories is going to be a bright one.
Governor Bryan.
Senator, I just want to say one thing before we wrap up. I want to assure you and the American taxpayers that the money that you are spending to rebuild our islands, our territories, are being used wisely and are creating resiliency. If you were to, this is the fourth total disaster that I've faced in my entire lifetime. If you look, and all of them have been hurricanes, I'm not counting in the minor ones that were in between. But if you were to take a census of the buildings and the damage that you see on the islands, they're the facilities and homes and residences that were built way before 1989 and our first initial disaster. Our public facilities, our public housing, they're 60 years old. They have seen 4 or 5 disasters. The building codes we have imposed and enacted, the burying of the cables, the hardening of our aerials using composite pole, the things that we are doing now to make sure that we are more resilient is money well spent. We have over 60% of the people who live on the islands have invested in some sort of generator. It's a little known fact that we manage our own water systems. There's about 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of fresh water underneath almost every Virgin Islander's home in a cistern. We want to be able to have the same kind of energy independence by equipping residents with whether they be generators, battery systems, solar systems, so that in the event of another storm and an unfortunate event that our grid system is damaged, everybody would have their own power. This is a move that we have to move towards in islands, not only because of global warming, but also because power is very expensive. So trust that we are doing the things that will make our territories and our island resilient. But you have to give us the opportunity to do it without the morass of federal bureaucracy and the skin in the game that people keep talking about. We can't get on a bus and drive to the next state when we face a hurricane. The skin in the game is our residents who face down these storms every single year and do so without much complaining. When the power goes out in a U.S. city for 2 hours, it's on CNN. We didn't have power for 3 months. Thank you for your time and your patience here today.
Well, Governor, you clearly strike a chord with this senator. We can get on a bus, but we have to go through another country, and it's about a week to get there. So we can relate most definitely to what you have outlined, and we just went through our own disaster with a 7.0 earthquake. We've had some 9,000 aftershocks. We're dealing with FEMA right now. So we can kind of feel your pain as far as that goes. But it's interesting when we talk about resilience. Alaska is the most earthquake-prone state in the United States. So we've learned from this, and what we saw with this strong earthquake was a resilience that we hadn't seen before because of the 1964 earthquake and the subsequent earthquakes. We've learned to build to standing code, to building codes that have really helped, and we certainly see greater resilience as you all have done what you've done for tens and hundreds of years out in these islands, because you get weather out there and you have to be resilient, you have to be independent, you have to kind of figure it out on your own. And so I hear very clearly the plea for give us some flexibility, because the way that you do it here in the lower 48 isn't necessarily how it's going to work in Tinian, in Guam, in Puerto Rico. It's just not going to be that way. So the conversation that we're having here today is very, very important. I know that in the omnibus appropriations bill a couple years ago, we established these energy action teams for each of the insular areas to help move you towards towards greater independence, if you will, from imported fuel, to work on your own domestic fuel source, to increase energy efficiency. The whole concept of the microgrid is just so perfectly suited to our islanded territories. And in that regard, Alaska is also viewed as somewhat islanded in that we're cut off from the rest of the continental 48. And we have been pioneering and leading with how you integrate these small little microgrids. We want to be able to share what we're doing in a cold, large place and share that with you in perhaps warmer and smaller places. But it's much of it is the same, but again, you need the flexibility to be able to adapt it as you will. I will follow on Senator Manchin's ask. I know you're busy while you're here in Washington, D.C., but any time that you and your teams can give the committee this week to help build out some of the issues that were raised here or things that we haven't raised. It was brought to my attention, Governor Torres, that in Alaska we've got a couple different energy projects that we've been trying to help on. We had an opportunity when we were in Tinian to look at the potential for partnering with our Alaska Aerospace and a launch facility. So there's more things for us to talk about that we haven't taken the time to raise here. I think it's important that we continue to work on just the aftermath of the emergency response, even though it's now 2 years after the fact, or in the case of CNMI, just months ago, how we're able to help there. But to deal with some of these issues that you all have addressed relating to health care, specifically Medicaid, how we tackle some of these very, very significant conversations. But know that within this committee, we don't forget you. You're a long ways away, but we don't forget you. And I really appreciate the effort that that you all have made, that when visiting delegations come through, that you take the time to try to educate us on the issues that are pending or that have been pending for quite some time. Oftentimes in this committee, we focus on the energy and the natural resources side of our committee's jurisdiction, but the well-being, the health and well-being and economies of your territories is equally significant. So know that is one of our many, many priorities. So again, I thank you all for making the long trip back here. I wish you well in all of your meetings, and please let's keep working on all of these issues that you have raised. And with that, the committee stands adjourned.